Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Navigating 2026 Cybersecurity Landscape webinar. I'm going to give everyone about another minute and a half until we get started. So thank you all for joining us today.
Ron, small talk.
So we've already got a good crowd in.
Glad small talk. You ever see Tattoo on Fantasy Island?
Yeah, we've got quite a crowd today, so looking forward to this. All right, I'm going to give it another 30 seconds, and then just in the interest of time, we'll get it started.
Everybody just super excited to talk about compliance and security.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, yeah, we had a huge registrants for this. People are really wanting to know what's going on in 2026, I think.
I'm interested to learn about cybersecurity today.
You will. You'll learn some stuff.
No doubt.
We got so much for you, sir.
All right. Looks like we've got about 40 people in. Probably get a few more. So I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. Good afternoon again and welcome. This is Navigating 2026 Cybersecurity Landscape with DP Solutions, Kaseya and ControlCase. My name is Jill Rose. I will be the webinar administrator for today's session. We've got a lot of great content lined up for you. So just before we jump in, just going to give a few quick housekeeping items just so everything runs smoothly. You've probably noticed everyone is muted and cameras are off just to keep everything distraction free. But we absolutely encourage you to use the chat throughout the session. Any questions, comments, or reactions, all welcome. We will address the questions as we go, and we will also be having live Q&A at the end. And be sure to stick around after the Q&A session to complete the poll. The first 30 registered attendees who complete it will also receive a $20 DoorDash gift card, which will be sent electronically after today's session. Session is being recorded. You will receive a copy of it directly to your inbox by tomorrow. And I think that's everything I have. Again, today is all about some practical insights, what's changing, what matters most, and where that leaders should focus to stay ahead in 2026. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Ken Goldstein, DP Solutions Chief Revenue Officer. Ken, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jill. Hey, welcome, everyone. We're really excited that you're here. The fact that we have just about 100 people registered really puts in light the importance of cybersecurity and continuing our conversations about security and the landscape and where things are and what you should be doing. From a value proposition standpoint for our clients, there's a couple levels to it. There's stability-wise, so we're doing your patching, we're reacting and servicing you. But on the security side, we want to make sure that you're safe and secure. The interesting thing about security is that it's more or less a discipline. So there's kind of a symbiotic relationship between our clients and us to make sure that you're safe. So we put an emphasis on education. So this continuing series around cybersecurity is essential because it is so fast moving. It does change rapidly. The threats are even worse than it was before. The tools are changing that we're using, the insight that we have, how we're responding. So it's really important to keep security top of mind, is why I have my serious hat on today, because it is a very serious conversation today. So we have 3 great guests that are going to be working with us today. I'll go through them as we go through the agenda. But from an agenda standpoint, obviously the bulk of our conversation is going to be around cybersecurity and handing it off to our paneled guests here today, which I'll introduce shortly. We'll go for about 30 to 40 minutes on their presentations themselves. And they have agreed we don't have to wait till the end to have questions. If there's something that you want to answer or maybe get a little bit more clarification about, please put it in the chat, and we can call that out as a part of their presentations themselves. Also, we're going to be doing a little trivia towards the end. So based on the conversation and the content, there will be some trivia where you can definitely win some prizes here. So I know that's probably the main reason everyone came. They figured there'd be prizes. That's why I'm here, just so you know. And then we'll have just a live open forum of questions, and we can provide answers there. And then there is an event poll that will be gift card eligible. So be sure to get in there with the poll. It's first come, first serve with that. And so we're looking forward to a great conversation today. Hopefully we educate you all, and we have just a great session in and of itself. So our three expert panels is Vlad, and I know I'm going to mess this up, but you said it's okay. Polismak, is that close enough? Yep. You're Senior Director of Product Strategy and Regulatory Compliance for Kaseya, great partner of ours. We use lots of tools and get lots of good education. Then we got Eric Levitas, Vice President of Business Development for ControlCase, a good partner and a long good friend of ours. And Ronald Connolly, our CISO, Chief Information Security Officer for DP Solutions here. So, Vlad, I'm going to hand it off to you with your presentation, and just let me know when to switch the slides, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Ken.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can just switch to the next one right away, please. All right. Thank you. Thank you all for joining. I know your time is available, and I greatly appreciate you being here. Talking about compliance, this might be not the most exciting topic to talk about, but it's an important topic. My name is Vlad Polismak. I am a Senior Director of Product Strategy and Compliance here at Kaseya, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today, talking about compliance. As agenda for myself, I have here, we're going to discuss the following threats that are moving faster than controls that we implement, emerging threats, right? What it actually means, the compliant gaps, the difference between different control types like static and dynamic controls. We're going to talk about staying ahead and what we can do to actually be more proactive. And we're going to close with the compliance as a baseline. So as a slide number one, thank you, Ken, is emerging threats and what it really mean, right? So let's just talk about the problem. And the problem is that the threats are moving faster than controls, right? Meaning, let's start with a simple reality check. When we talk about emerging threats, it often sounds like, somewhat conceptual or maybe even abstract, right? But reality is not. It's actually impacting organizations every day, globally, everywhere, right? The threats landscape nowadays is evolving. It's fast, it's dynamic, faster than ever in history. We cannot realistically keep up with everything, but we do our best, what we can do, right, to be up to speed. And so let's start maybe just with a few things. So it's not just about attacks. I mean, we just said that it's smarter attacks, right? The attacks are faster, their execution is faster. Attackers specifically targeting gaps that sometimes in environments that not implementing any security, or sometimes environments that security has been implemented at, and that the owners think they are secure mistakenly, right? Super important. And today attackers are not just breaking the system, they are targeting the gaps and the weaknesses in our programs, in most cases where we are not even aware exist. So at this time, compliance requirements are becoming more and more demanding. Like I said, it's not just in the US, it's global. We're talking about a lot of privacy enforcements. Specifically, everybody might have heard about GDPR in Europe. We're talking about the compliance initiatives here in the US, like FedRAMP. We all know about CMMC. Maybe CMMC level 2 rings the bell, right? It's been everywhere as a buzzword. We're talking about ISO 27001, which is again accepted globally. We're talking about SOC 2. Okay, the expectation is not just talk about them, right? But actually, what do we do about them, right? How do we implement? And the reality is the expectation is it's not just about the controls exist, even if you selected specific framework. It's not just about having the controls checkmarked, right? It's about how do we actually confirm that those controls are operational, right? How do we satisfy them, not just on the paper, but how do we confirm that? But the reality is much bigger effort than just checkmark the control. They need to be continuously monitored. We're talking about the CONMON, right? For in jargon of CMMC or FedRAMP, we're talking about that they need to be measurable in terms of effectiveness. So we are basically in a position when the threats are accelerating, compliance expectations are increasing, and organizations are trying to keep up with both to be aligned, right? Which is super difficult task. And that's not super easy. So for most compliance programs are traditionally implement to provide structure on how controls are baseline, right? So you select the framework, you get the minimum baseline, you implement them, and you build on the top of that, right? But it's with the today threat landscape, right? Speed it's super challenging. So most compliance programs are traditionally implement to structure, and so the real question becomes, how do we stay ahead of these emerging threats while we're still operating within compliance-driven environment? So thank you, Ken, for moving to the next slide. What emerging threats actually mean, right?
So let's back here.
Yeah, that's right. So let's break down what that actually means, right? Emerging threats. Most of the people might think that it's completely new attacks, which is not true, right? The emerging threats are not only new attacks. They are, but it's very small percentage. Most emerging threats are existing attacks methods that are used in the new ways, right? So it's something that has already been around for a while, but the attackers have identified the new ways how to expose them, right? Faster exploitation on known vulnerabilities. You can usually see the old vulnerabilities from back in the days reappearing, right? It's increasing automation from the attackers. Talking about new AI tools that being leveraged, right? And how many different attack types you can enforce with those AI tools, right? And targeting areas that are assumed to be secure, which is one of the big one too. So for example, the ransomware has evolved, right? It became more targeted and strategic. The phishing didn't disappear. They became more sophisticated, right? More convincing and personalized, right? So if you use any tools in, like, I don't want to drop the names, but there's a well-known tools that are actually creating amazing phishing attacks, right? And as you know, from the security standpoint, insider threat, which is our people, our employees, right, are the biggest threat still, regardless the AI, regardless all we have with the technology, people are still the weakest link. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit more about this, right? So we said that the ransomware has evolved, right? The phishing did disappear. Talking about the supply chain with the global conditions right now, right? The supply chain attacks has grown, and the system, being impacted by that. So let's just move on. So recently we've seen that a lot of identity-based attacks also that are primary entry points. We're talking about the cloud misconfigurations. As we all migrate to the secure environments in AWS and Azure and GCP, we see that, we adapt them, but we kind of somewhat maybe operate under assumption that they all secure, right? They provide you the ability to be secure, but it doesn't mean that as soon as you onboard to them, that makes you automatically secure. So got to be mindful of that. So when we say emerging, what that actually means is that the threats are evolving faster, that the control that we have in place can keep up with, right? So that's that. So let's move on to the next one, please, Ken.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's basically just general information. There's no source really for that, but I think it's important to see numbers that most organizations are, 89% compliant on the paper. In reality, that's not true in, as far as operational control standpoint, right? So let's move to the next one, please. So this is important one, all right? So the compliance gap, the static and dynamic controls. So let's talk about the compliance for a second, right? So compliance frameworks are super important, right? They are what I say. I take it as a Bible, right, on how to implement security, right? We need to have that point of reference when we go back and we see how do we actually do it. Otherwise, everybody going to be just lost. There's no standards, there's nothing, right? So the way I see it is that that book of structure that help us to define what the good security should look like. So they provide the baseline, like I said, and without those baselines, most organizations wouldn't even know where to start. But there's a limitation. So most compliance frameworks are built around static controls, meaning things like access control policies, encryption requirements, right? Logging, monitoring, like incident response plan, and more on and on and on, right? they're all necessary. They super important as a bigger system security plan, right? But the bigger challenge that controls really don't help that much and goes beyond that actually is how do we enforce those controls? How do we make them operational? How do we confirm they actually, closing the gaps that might exist, right? And that's a real effort. But again, in meanwhile, all the threats are constantly evolving, getting better, smarter, faster, right? So most compliance frameworks are built around, these controls, and enforcing is super important, right? And attackers are adapting to them too, right? I mean, attackers are getting more sophisticated and smarter. They change their tactics. They look like for the timing gaps. They look for, how to chain together small weaknesses to make a bigger impact, and how controls are actually implemented, since they can also have some proper expectations. And so what's end up happening is that your environment that is technically compliant, right? It's not necessarily secure against how those attacks are happening today. So like, just give you an example, like maybe a simple example, right? So MFA, like multi-factor authentication, we can say MFA, 2FA, two-factor authentication, more than one, right? Organization can implement MFA. They check the box, right? Saying, control requiring to have MFA implementation is checked, right? And, they think they're good, right? Control is satisfied. But attackers have already adapted. They use the MFA fatigue attacks, the session hijacking, the token thief, right? There's so many different ways to bypass what that control requirements are, right? Again, that's what I'm talking about, more detail. So the control exists, but the threat already evolved past it, and that's the gap, all right? So the gap is the modern attack succeed. So because of that, at the end of the day, compliance give you foundation, but I want you all to be aware, and you probably are, that this is not the finish line. There's much more beyond that, right? All right, so staying ahead of, and isn't just doing it more, right? So that's going to be probably the next slide, Ken, please.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, staying ahead. Okay, so how do you actually stay ahead, right? That's the real question here. So how do we get more proactive and not just reacting to these problems? Because the answer isn't adding more tools or controls in that sense. That actually just adds the complexity sometimes. Sometimes it's not, but sometimes it adds the complexity without solving the real problem in this context. It's about how do we operate your program. First, you have to treat compliance as a living, ongoing effort, not something you're revisiting once a year before your SOC 2 audit, not once a year where you're actually trying to check something, right, and you don't know. It's ongoing effort. There's a dedicated team that has to stay on the top of this on a daily basis. It has to evolve, right? So it has to keep up with the technology, right? It has to be evolved. You got to make sure you're updating your policies as there are any changes. You got to make sure you're training your personnel. You're making sure you send those phishing to your internal teams, right? All of those things are super important to keep that security program and compliance active. How attacks are actually happening today? Right, we need to stay on the top of that. We need to make sure that logs are being reviewed, right? Are we collecting the right logs? Do we actually, are they meaningful? Is there anything meaningful from not just to collect inside of collect, right? We need to collect the logs that are meaningful, that can give you some support, some information about some activities. There should be something that you can reference, right? You have any type of alerting, right? Are they, again, meaningful alerts or just noise, right? To have alert just to have alert is not what we want to see. Access controls aligned with the real world usage, right? Is that like, yeah, if you put MFA, but your physical door is open, does that actually help you, right? If he can break in and take your computer, right? So things like that, real world usage as scenarios. And that shifts us from the existing to effectiveness, and that's what's critical. And third, we need to align architecture early, right? So a lot of times, and companies start small, they grow. That's the main primary reason we've seen, right? But sometimes you have an ability to build a program from scratch or the tool or product. And it's very important to build a product from scratch where you have the right people involved from the security standpoint and from the compliance standpoint, meaning that those compliance requirements are implemented and security considerations are also involved from the beginning, right? Build with security in mind. That's the biggest challenge, of course, and a lot of organizations face that, but try to insert the compliance in the system in the early stages. Okay. So just a few more things, I guess, to close this. Prioritize identity. Like, if you look at the modern breach attacks, right? Identity is almost always an entry point, right? Like I said, strong identity and access management, least privilege. Make sure you don't provide users more access that they need to do their job. Continuously monitor, do this user recertifications that, if user migrate from one role to another, make sure that that access is given just for that new role and not what he carries from the past. And ensure you, again, build with the security in mind architecture. So just to close on the slide 5, please. We just talked about that, Ken. So I guess the last one. One more, please. Yeah. So before we're closing here, right, I just want to say, so to bring this all together, right, the emerging threats are not just the new attacks. Their speed, adaptability, exploiting gaps between controls and reality. Their compliance frameworks give us a structure, consistency, a baseline, but staying ahead, we require more, right? We need to continuously validate, control effectiveness, align architecture with security expectations, and thinking beyond just passing an audit. Because a goal not to chase every new threat, the goal is to build a program that we can adapt them to that, right? So as they evolve, as the frameworks change, as organizations getting more successful, they need to stay flexible. You got to stay, as system owners, you got to stay informed and look at the compliance as a tool and not just as finish line. So with that, I'll open for any questions, and if not, I'll just pass to Eric.
Thank you, Vlad. I mean, just to reiterate what we heard, it's a discipline, security itself, correct? It's a moving target at some point, staying on top of it, making sure that you're following your guidelines, but staying visible.
That is exactly right. Absolutely. Yep.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you. You just let me know when to progress the slides.
Yeah, go ahead and jump to the first slide. Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate the DP team and always enjoy hanging out with Vlad and talking through things with him. So look, I come at compliance from a different perspective, right? So ControlCase is an audit and certification shop. So when you guys are getting certification standards, or you have an RFP, or you've got a client vendor agreement and they're saying you need to be X compliant in order to do business with us. My value to you and the way that I think about compliance is there's 2 reasons to do it, right? And there's a big reason why you're seeing this more in RFPs and you're seeing this more come down the pipe. I can't even tell you how many times I get somebody that goes, well, now I can't work within that supply chain without being SOC 2, ISO, HIPAA, again, the acronym soup goes on and on and on. So I think the big thing that I'm trying to decode and my thought process here is you're doing this for business reasons, generating revenue. Compliance equals revenue, in my opinion. And then just being safe, right? So there is a, I tell people, like, you obviously want to do this to protect yourself, protect your people, protect your clients. That isn't obvious, but you're also doing this from a business perspective. And that is, in my mind, is what's been shifting and changing over the bunch of years of now you can't do business if you don't have X certification or show X alignment to a certain standard. And again, we'll talk through a lot of acronyms today. I'll do my best to try to decode the acronyms as a whole, but it's just been a really impactful year with everything Vlad said, right? You're seeing these smarter hackers, you're seeing people in different countries just so happen to have the same air shift that we do. How did they get that? They stole our stuff, right? Somebody spider webbed into somebody else and stole that one piece, and now they have all of our information. You didn't, no intention behind that, but you are now the gap of why we've been breached. Go ahead, Ken, jump to the next slide. So cybersecurity and compliance as a whole is about a bunch of different things: tools, technologies, and processes and procedures, right? So, and people. So at the end of the day, when you're getting compliant and when you're going up against this massive undertaking to become compliant, which again is a business reason and just a compliance reason, it needs to work for your business, because at the end of the day, when you're getting asked to provide to me, the auditor, that you are compliant, I need to know that you have the appropriate documentation, you have the appropriate policies and procedures, you've implemented the right technology, you've trained your people appropriately. Those people know how to implement your policies and procedures, and it's not just a book sitting up in the shelf, right? So what's happening now is you need to come to me, you need to get assessed, and then the end client is validating that proof. That end client is saying, by you having this certification that has been validated by a third party or not, that you've self-assessed against this standard, X standard, insert standard here, you are doing that with the notion that they are going to allow you to work within their supply chain, and they're going to allow you to continue to engage with them. It is industry focused. I've seen it in the nonprofit space, the DoD space. I've seen it in the IT space. I mean, you think of somebody like DP, right? They hold certifications to be a good managed service provider because their clients in all these different industries are asking for them to be X compliant based on the information that they're handling. Kaseya as well. You'll look at it on their website. People are I have a marketing background, right? I'm the least technical person here, but business and marketing side of the house, you want to plaster up on your wall. And I tell people all the time, you heard Vlad throw out some of these crazy acronyms of what Kaseya and others are working towards. Those are gold standards that you need to tell everybody about, because when you get asked by your clients, are you meeting this? Your first answer wants to be yes. Yes, and how? And here's my cert, and here's my report, and here's this. So these are more generalistic things. I'm going to get more into the meat and potatoes of security and compliance as a whole, but self-attestation is slowly being pushed out the door. Third-party validation is slowly being introduced. And by having a third party come in, you can't slack anymore. You can't just validate a control at a vague level and say, I think I'm doing this right. Somebody like my company is going to come in and actually validate that you're doing that, so that the end client actually believes and can show, yes, you are meeting X security standard. You can now work within my supply chain and do business with me. Go ahead and Ken, keep going. So I'm going to throw out some acronyms. I'm going to get a little deep in them. And if anybody has any particular questions about any of them, please ask. But these are one of many, right? So if you are a DoD contractor and you are doing business with the Department of Defense, I am assuming you have already seen these crazy 4 letters, CMMC. It is, in my opinion, one of the largest undertakings that a compliance standard has come through, and it is one of the more stringent compliance standards. And again, with doing business with a DIB, well, why do these different countries have access to our information? It's because self-attestation doesn't work anymore. So CMMC basically said, well, we've already been asking you guys to do this forever. Your contracts have language built into it that says that you should have already been doing these things. Let's double check that now. If you handle certain information, we need you to get validated now. And if you don't get that, you can't do business with the government anymore. So the hot button ticket with them right now is, if you are handling something called CUI, controlled unclassified information, you must get a third-party certification company to come out and validate you are actually meeting all the controls within CMMC. If you do not have that certification by time of award, you don't get the award. So there it goes back to a business decision and a compliance decision, right? You want to do it to be compliant so that the other countries don't steal our stuff. But now it is a barrier to actually win that business that maybe you've been winning that contract for 25 years. And now you can't, because that contractor above you flowed down CUI, and you are now subject to this standard that it's not a, well, I'll do it later or I'll self-attest. You need to get in line and get assessed by a third party like myself, and to be able to bid on those contracts. Little bit different, but the same mentality. ISO and SOC 2, I'm assuming, are things that you guys hear all the time. I see them in security questionnaires like a blanket statement. Are you NIST, ISO, SOC 2, or PCI compliant? And then it says like pick one, because I'm sure everybody realizes this, that the procurement officers probably have no idea. Somebody above them gave them this requirement, and now they've blanket statemented that you need to be compliant. But somebody above them said, we just need to show compliance. So ISO is a standard that's accepted globally. I see a lot of IT companies use it. I see a lot of nonprofit companies use it. I see a lot of like HR companies use it. It's a standard that is accepted more globally. So if you have a global reach and you're being asked to be compliant, ISO is a fantastic path. ISO 27001, there's ISO 9001, there's ISO insert 4 or 5 letter numbers. I mean, there's 1,000 ISO certs, but if you're doing business with the government, it's a point system. So again, whereas CMMC is either have it or can't bid on contract, ISO is, hey, if you have it, you get more points to win that contract. So again, it's just creating a competitive advantage to get more business. It's all about getting revenue in the door and using compliance as a mechanism to do that. SOC 2, on the other hand, again, I either see companies get ISO and SOC or ISO or SOC. It's more of a nationally recognized standard. So again, if you don't have much international business, SOC 2 might be a better standard. It's a little bit different. It's more of a report that's delivered versus a certification for both ISO and CMMC. But again, I could have an entire webinar on SOC 2, an entire webinar on ISO, and an entire webinar on CMMC. I think the biggest things I want to say is when you run into these things, whether it's on a security questionnaire, an RFP, a vendor questionnaire, or somebody's flowing this down to you, run towards it. Know that you have people like myself, you've got the Kaseya team, and you've got the DP team, that as a conglomerate group, we don't compete against each other. We actually are uniform, right? So where Kaseya's got the tools to support DP, who supports you from a management perspective, and I then come in and audit you, right? So as a conglomerate group, we can take you from start to finish, but I just want to make sure that you don't run away from these things. The only time I would ever recommend running away from compliance is if you have a $5,000 contract and it's $100,000 to get compliant, and there is no opportunity to go bigger, better on that contract. It might not make sense. Maybe it's better to align yourself to more of a standard like the CIS controls, Center for Internet Security, or NIST CSF. Go find a standard that just is a healthy best practice that maybe doesn't require a third party. But these certifications, in my humble opinion, are a differentiator. They will help you get more business. They're something you should plaster proudly on your website, on all of your marketing slicks, and you should be telling everybody about them. And in theory, it should help you win more business, period. Go ahead, Ken, jump forward. So look, just to get you into the minds of the auditor, right? So a lot of people think we're the big bad boss at the end of the rainbow, and some are. Some are not the nicest people out there, but the assessor is really tasked to do a couple of things, and it's very specific based on industry, and it's very specific based on compliance standard. A PCI auditor versus a HIPAA auditor versus a CMMC auditor versus an ISO auditor, in theory, sound the same, but they are doing different things. But at the crux of the situation, they're all validating the same thing. What is your scope? Is it your whole company? Did you designate one computer? Is it 5 computers? Do you have multiple locations? Scope impacts absolutely every standard that you could think of in the community, and everybody that moves forward in a compliance engagement, the first thing you should do is validate standard, or validate scope. Because if everybody has to be in scope, fine. Then you know you need to make buying decisions within that scope. But if you just start buying things without validating your scope, and this is industry-wide, what's going to happen is you're going to have to manage that. And if you're realizing that maybe your scope only needs to be this big, well, now you've made all these buying decisions in a scope that you can't manage as a company, and now you've got to reinvest. So now you've double dipped. Now again, all back to business and money. At the end of the day, you're now paying twice, right? So validate scope, and that is the first thing that assessors are going to do. Validate your scope. Tell me what your scope is. Is it an enclave? Is it enterprise? Is it hybrid? Do you have stuff on-prem? Is it only in the cloud? What cloud applications are in scope? What information is being processed through that? It all matters, and it dictates everything. And then it's all the responsibility of the people that are around you, right? So you've got your managed service providers like DP Solutions. You've got your cloud service providers like Kaseya, right? You've got your professional services companies like DP, right? So then you've got all these players that support you to oversee responsibility. And when the assessor comes in, if I say, hey, show me how you're doing X, and you go, oh, that's a DP Solutions thing. You need to make sure they've got their stuff in line, or, oh, that's my Kaseya product does that. You need to make sure they have their stuff in line to make sure that I can address that control. Again, all the auditor is doing is they're going control by control, objective by objective. They're going criteria by criteria, whatever the standard calls for, and they are just validating, did you meet that control? Can you showcase that you meet that control? And is it documented? Every standard asks for the same things, right? Prove it, show it to us, document it, right? And that goes for everybody in your ecosystem. And then it's all about inheritance, right? So like if I don't want to get too specific, but like in CMMC, the word FedRAMP is a really value add statement, right? If you have a cloud application that has a FedRAMP certification, there's something like inheritance that takes over. So remember that responsibility thing we talked about? If you're saying, I have a full-time day job, I can't manage this entire program. I already manage this whole company. I can't manage this program as well. Well, when you start to invest in tools that are doing appropriate things like Kaseya and again, DP that have an appropriate tech stack, you're lessening the burden on you and lessening the responsibility. So when that auditor comes in, it's not like, oh, it's on me, it's on me, it's on me. And then the auditor will essentially rip you apart respectfully, because usually it's very hard to manage an entire program by yourself without the appropriate people around you. It's just like think of a sports team. If you just have a quarterback, you have no sports team. You need the players around you. You've got the players here on that call, and these are the players doing the right things that'll help you get to the finish line. So when I'm your finish line, it's a smooth transaction, because we don't want to fail you. We want you to get that cert to continue to do business at the end, but we have to follow the rules. Go ahead, Ken. Yeah, we don't need to spend too much time on this slide. Again, if you guys have questions, please feel free to ping me, but every standard requires its own special thing. CMMC needs a system security plan, asset categorization, properly mapped, proper CUI. Again, I can acronym soup you guys to the death. I don't think that's an appropriate time or this is the appropriate audience, but just know this. When you engage with an appropriate readiness partner and an appropriate team, again, I keep throwing it back to these guys, they will work with me to set expectations with you on what I'm expecting. I cannot tell you how to meet it. That's a lie. Some of these standards actually let us tell you how to do it, which is wild to me. Most do not. Most are, again, I'm the DMV and you've done your driver's test and I'm the test at the end of it. It's like everybody's done their part to try to prepare you as much as possible, but like you still got to get through me, right? And I can give you all the resources necessary. I just cannot tell you how to do it. But every standard has their own requirements, documentation, ISMS for ISO, the trust criteria for SOC 2, SSP for FedRAMP and CMMC. Just go in, have conversations early with your auditors, have conversations early with your readiness partners and your cloud providers, and say, what do I need to start preparing to give to my assessment team so that I'm not shocked when that assessor comes to me and says, well, where is this? And you go, I don't even know what that is. I'm then going to go, well, I can't move forward with your assessment. And now that contract you're bidding on that you needed this assessment done by X date, can't bid on it anymore. And we don't want to be that roadblock. So it's communicating as a group here to you of all the things we need so that you come fully prepared for the test. And we are technically a professional test against these different standards. So we could keep going, Ken. I don't need to get super specific here unless somebody needs it. So this is, I think, is one of the most important slides. And it's, I think, one of my last slides. Common pitfalls that I see, industry standard. Industry-wide, doesn't matter what the standard is. I already talked about scope. If you cannot appropriately lock down your scope and communicate it to us, it's the first red flag. It causes failures all the time. If I say to you, if you go, oh yeah, we just have these 2 computers in scope and oh, awesome. And then all of a sudden we're talking to you and you're like, well, yeah, we do have that printer and technically we have that CNC machine. And I mean, yeah, kind of, John works from home and he accesses. Wait a second, your documentation only speaks to those 2 computers. Problem, right? So this is locking down your scope, validating immediately, and then continuing to validate throughout your entire readiness process is the most important thing that you could possibly do. Actually having appropriate documentation. So I know it sounds like a crazy concept, but like just because you could tell me what you're doing, it needs to be documented and you need to be able to show it. So God forbid you get hit by the lottery bus and you leave, you have it documented and others can execute on it, because a lot of these assessments are annual or triannual, or sometimes even, again, some people get multiple assessments a year. So having your documentation match what you're actually doing and being able to validate it is the probably number two thing I see on a common basis of issues during the audit process. Improper asset categorization, right? So if you tell me you've got only the Kaseya stack in your suite, but then all of a sudden I see, ABC stack, and you're like, well, technically they're in scope. Well, nothing's been documented back to scope, back to documentation. Your assets and the managed service providers, the managed security service providers, and the cloud service providers that surround you impact your success. So find the right ones. You have a few sitting here. Engage with them and ask them those questions. And then again, all back to responsibility, right? If you believe something is not your responsibility and you're investing in a product or a company to do work for you, make sure they can fit the bill for you. Make sure they can answer the questions, make sure they can validate it. If you are deeming them in scope, they need to be able to back up what they're doing to support your scope to be assessed, no matter what the standard is. It all matters. And these are probably the top four things I see as companies either not passing or false starting, or just ultimately not being able to finalize the process in time to bid on a contract. These are the four things that I hit on every single time. Go ahead, Ken. Yeah, I mean, I've pretty much talked through this. We don't have to spend too much time on this, but again, just there's a lot of things you could do to be audit ready. You can do mock assessments with the auditor. You could do gap assessments with the auditor. So even though you have a really solid team helping you get ready, you can engage with the auditor to do a spot check, just to double check, just to make sure we're all on the same page. And you'll even find, and I know this specifically with the DP team, they want to make sure their work is validated, because every assessor, interpretation kills. Interpretation, this industry is wild, but interpretation kills. I'll just leave it at that. So just make sure you come as audit ready as humanly possible. That's all I have to say for this slide. Nothing crazy here. Yeah, so best practices, do your readiness assessments, engage with the right staff, have your right documentation, map everything down to what you would consider is the objective level or the control level, whatever the standard is asking for. Set up your boundary, document, and organize it. Make sure you set your assessor up for success and not have things all over the place. And then do mock assessments, right? So these are some terms. And when we send these slides out, again, if you guys have questions, these are some of the acronym soup that I've used. Go ahead, Ken. So I appreciate it. I know I've spoken a lot, but this is a really important topic. You've got great partners here. If anybody has any questions, please feel to reach out, and I'm happy to address. Go ahead, Ron, please. The floor is yours, and Ken, go for it.
Great. Thank you, Eric. So first, Ken, let's go back one slide. It's a lot of the folks that are on the call. There's a lot of GovCon, so I can go on for days with talking to CMMC and the NIST level stuff, but other frameworks as well. We're not just CMMC and NIST. We do many frameworks and getting you ready for everything. The one thing I'd really just want to point out on this slide is on the right side in the light blue, the second bullet point, leverage an RPO. That's a organization, a registered provider organization. That is the one like DP Solutions. Trained staff of CCPs and CCAs, CMMC certified professional and CMMC certified assessors. We have those on staff. Casey Chapman and myself, she's a CCP, almost a CCA. I'm already a CCA. The benefit of those is a CCA is the exact same as you're going to go when you go through a C3PO, such as ControlCase. The auditor, the assessor, same position, just different names. They are CCAs. They are the ones that run the show. They do the exact same training that we do internally with our team. We've trained the same way. So when you do your readiness assessments with us, primarily CMMC in this case, we are trained the exact same way to know what they look for. And most of you on here that have gone through your readiness assessment with us, you know that we treat those assessments as if you're doing a real mock assessment. We come in a different mindset. We come in with a different kind of an attitude a little bit, and we're like, show us the proof. Eric's touched on this. You have a document that says this, prove to me that you're doing that. So your document says we use MFA. Okay, cool. Do you have MFA in place? If you do not, then you don't meet that requirement. So that's the benefit of that. So I'm going to get off of the CMMC soapbox because, Ken, if you can go ahead 2 slides. We're going to go through my slides kind of quickly. I just want to focus on 2 other slides that are have more detail on them. Really just want to talk about the impact of cyber incidents. So a cyber incident, by definition, is really just anything that affects your organization or your users or anything like that that comes through a cyber gateway. So email, ransomware through your server, malware, anything like that that affects your computer, your infrastructure or anything like that. So I'm just going to throw some numbers on here or talk to you some numbers. So the downtime of a cyber incident, the average downtime of a small to medium-sized business, this was put out by a Gallup poll just about 2 months ago. The average of 52% of impacted small businesses, small to medium businesses, reported losing 5 to 7% of their annual revenue per ransomware incident. Now, this is a full ransomware where they come in and they attack at least half of your devices. So if you have 25 devices and they come in and attack half of those, that is what falls into this 52%. 15% of those same numbers reported losing 12 to 15% of their annual revenue per incident. One organization had 3 incidents. So that alone is pushing 50% of their annual revenue for incidents. All 3 of these incidents, they did not grow their cyber posture. One was lacking MFA. They had remote desktops without protections. They had a mixed match of EDR and MDR solutions, things like that. There was no consistency across the board. Out of all of these that are compliant related, 48% of this was just for 2025. The 48% of the reported impacts hitting small and medium businesses reported that they were fined due to compliance or regulatory exposures. So whether it was NIST, HIPAA, SOC, CIs, whatever it happens to be, they were fined by the regulatory bodies for not having those solutions in place or for reporting that they were in place and they actually were not. Some of the impacts that that can hit you, an organization, when it comes to compliance in general, it's not just government contracts. It is not just the GovCons that are out there that are having to face CMMC or NIST or anything. You have CIS, which is kind of like the catch-all when it comes to just business in general. HIPAA, SOC 2, SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley, ISO, GLBA, PCI, the list goes on and on and on. They all have their various requirements and everything when it comes to how do you handle cybersecurity, how do you respond to an incident, and then what do you do afterwards. If you don't have those 3 things in place, then you are seriously at risk. No matter your framework that you follow, and if you are the type that I don't fall under any of those, you would fall under basically CIS, which is the baseline of just security in general. It's loosely built on NIST as well, so you have some more framework, MFAs in place, lockdown systems, things like that. Some of the other things you can have, you can be, along with the fines, you can lose contracts. We have seen it in the past where there was a compromise, the risk was there, they fell through, they fell for some audit and everything, and then when it was reported appropriately, the contract holder basically said that, prove to me that this won't happen again, and they kind of did, and then it happened again, and they lost their contract. So that's easily something that can happen. The reputation cost, that is probably going to be one of the bigger impacts because however long you've been in the industry or in business in general, if it goes out there that X client was hit with ransomware and all their client data was leaked and everything, if I'm a member of your organization, it's going to make me think twice about if I want to do business with you because you leaked my data, whether you did it intentionally or not. My data was leaked and now it's out there. Now in 2026, little thing called the dark web, everything's out there on the dark web, but the goal is to minimize that exposure as possible. And that's where your compliance comes into play, and having the tools in place help protect you against that. So Ken, if you can move forward. So this one, this is really just some of the areas that we have that we run into problems is, and you just highlight, whoever just highlighted that, is we see a lot of reliance on tools, and a tool will solve me or a tool will protect me. The analogy I like to use is that I have a 2026 vehicle. It is a great, safe vehicle. It's been passed through all kinds of national safety tests and everything. I wear my seatbelt. I drive the speed limit and everything. Everything is great. Those are tools that are in place that are protecting me. I drive like a madman. That's a user level thing. If I drive like crazy down the road, swerving in and out of traffic and everything, I will cause an accident. Not if I will eventually cause an accident. That's cybersecurity. If your users are not trained properly, they will be compromised, whether it's a simple compromise, change password and you're good to go, or it leads to ransomware and you're down for days at a time or anything. That risk is there and it will happen. So reliance on tools is a educational thing with industry-wide or business in general. The more you get out of that mindset that my tools will save me and my employees they won't do that. They do that. I'm here to tell you they will do that. There is somebody on this call that I can tell you that they had a compromise of the financial institution, and it was not anything they did wrong, but it happened through a user-based side or user response where credentials were used and the bad guys got in that way. Now, nothing was lost or anything, but that is no tool could have prevented that. That is a user, an employee actually doing something. Okay, Ken, if you can switch over. And yeah, again, this is size. I hear this all the time. We're too small. Nobody's going to come after us. We're a nobody in the industry. We only have 3 people. Bad guys don't care about your size. They care about attacking you. I've seen anywhere from single person organizations hit to hundreds of thousands of employees where they've been hit. That doesn't matter. The bad guys want to get in there, steal your data, and ransom it back to you. That's the kind of the gist. It's about making money and stealing your data. Okay, Ken, one more. So this is one of the main slides I want to look at. This is some of this is already touched on by Eric and Vlad, but I just really want to touch on a few things here. And this goes back to just some high level stuff. So when it comes to your tools that you rely on, I just talked about that, is 90% of the compromises. Again, same Gallup poll. We also found this in some of our own research, doing our tickets over the past year or so. 90% plus of compromises and breaches are due to credential related issues. So whether it's me having a post-it note of my passwords on a keyboard, which we see as well, or under my keyboard or on my laptop, or in a unprotected text file on my desktop, or leaving my computer unlocked when I walk away, or just putting in your credentials when asked for it and inadvertently letting the bad guys in. Any of those things are compromised credentials. If the bad guys get in with your credentials and they start scanning and scanning and scanning, they're looking for somebody with elevated access to do damage. So like a global admin. If you have a global admin in your environment or a full administrator, they're going to scan and scan and scan, and they're going to see that, oh, Vlad is a global admin. Let me get into his account. Now I have free reign to your entire organization. So the compromise of credentials is incredibly important, and that is the easiest area to control, but it's also the hardest one to manage because it's, again, the human impact is there. Email security and endpoint protection, these are the tools that we have, whether it's through Kaseya or whichever tools we use. Having those tools in place and updated and make sure they're maintained and everything, that's something that we do. And we have third parties that help us with that, the vulnerability and patch management. All of those are great, but if devices are left offline or if you're not getting the updates or anything like that, that's where we and our team will go through and make sure you remain secure. The other thing we hear all the time when it comes to tools is that 1 or 2 people or multiple people in the organization do not like to have the tools on my system because it might slow me down, or I don't like having that banner there because it's annoying, or I can't see a preview of my email. Those are there to protect you, and you are the target. And the people that usually say, I don't want that there, are usually the targets, and they have a C level or a C in their name, their title and everything. Those are usually targets for like a CFO. If I'm a bad guy, I'm going after the CFO before I go after the marketing team. Because that CFO has the data I want. They have the keys to the kingdom. I want that data. Marketing might have access, but not the same amount of access, and it's easier going to be to get in if I attack the CFO. So data compliance, I'm not going to really touch on this one since Eric just went in great detail on this one. So Ken, if we go to the next one, and this is the area where I want to highlight and close out on this one. On the right side, overlapping tools, this is the not so much of a big problem anymore that we see, especially with any of our clients, is where we see multiple tools in place where you have 2 EDRs or 2 MDRs in place. They're fighting for each other, things like that. We're pretty good about that. And we do have, it is 2026. We have the means to where we can make one a primary, one a secondary. They don't really fight too much. So we don't have the tools there. But where we run into issues is that the tools are not managed properly. So if you have a tool in place that we don't control or we don't manage, and you're not managing it properly, and it's a key security tool, we might not know about your alerts or your vulnerabilities and things like that. Or if we report that you have vulnerabilities, that, hey, you're lacking MFA, and we recommend you do this, and you want to do something else that doesn't meet those same requirements or anything, you're kind of fighting with the compliance and everything, and it makes the gaps, and those gaps are what causes the problems where the bad guys can get in. And a really big one is the second one there, and this is also on the next slide when we get to it, is compliance and security is not a one-time thing. We have a lot of CMMC readiness assessments and mock and final assessments we're dealing with right now. A lot of y'all on call have been through these with us. They're not a get us certified right now and then we'll be good to go. After that, we will start winning contracts. With CMMC in particular, you have to self-assess next year and the following year, and then go through the same full C-through-PO assessment in 3 years. So it's not a get me certified and I'm done. It is an ongoing thing that will affect potentially the entire organization. When it comes to specifically CMMC, it could be a smaller enclave, so 5 or 6 people could be in scope, as Eric and Vlad were talking about, and we tackle those and make their secure, but the rest of the company still needs to be secure. Now, if the entire organization is in scope, then it's a lot harder because you have more people that we have to maintain and control, and it's a change. People don't like change. So if we're locking down people from doing their jobs, we usually have a reason why, and usually compliance, but we also have do you need that access to do this, or do you just want that access? Well, I just want that access. Well, compliance says, no, we can't do that. And if you want to overrule that, that's where you get into the bugs and having those gaps and everything. So I think that's all I have here. Ken, if you can, one more, I just touched on this one. Next line is, it's not a one-time project. It is very serious. Bad guys are not sleeping. They're using AI these days. So I'm sure they get hundreds of phone calls or spam calls or emails and all that. Those things, those tests and how you respond to those are incredibly important. If you openly get there and the CFO says, hey, mail me 50 gift cards, your CFO is not going to do that. If they do, that's a different conversation, but they're not going to do that. So don't buy 50 gift cards without going over to your CFO saying, did you really want me to do this? And the answer is 99% going to be no, I did not. That's spam. Don't buy the gift cards, things like that. The education comes into play, so being mindful and everything, and that's where we can help with that, and that's where we work with our partners such as Eric and Vlad and team to remediate any of those issues. And I think that's all we have, Kim.
Great, it's terrific. And just to tie a bow to this, from a practical and pragmatic standpoint, what we're hearing is obviously the cybersecurity incidents are impactful to businesses, whether you're going through a compliance or whether you're just a general business where it may impact your bottom line because there's been a lot of damage to your revenue and your reputation and things like that. We have the tools in place, we have the minds in place, but it is a discipline, right? So we need to keep you all educated, but you should be asking your MSPs and your partners some deeper questions, because it's not just a cross your fingers things like they got it. The information is critical, it's impactful to your business, and from a management side of things, we want to make sure that you are at a level where you understand what that impact is and how it may impact or affect your ability to achieve what you're trying to do as a business. So very good. Thank you, Eric, Vlad, and Ron. I appreciate it. It is trivia time. I'm sensitive to time here. So we're going to have 3 quick questions, 3 winners. Jill is going to pull up that poll. So here we go. Jill, you want to read through it?
Yep, I'll give you about 1 minute in the interest of time. So question number 1, you all seeing the poll up there? Yes. Okay, cool. Which of the following is identified as the #1 risk area across most organizations? Network firewalls, identity security, backup and disaster recovery, or physical office security? Then we can scroll, if you can vote, we can scroll through each question when you're ready. How do compliance frameworks reduce cyber risk in practice? By requiring annual audits only, by increasing documentation and reporting, by enforcing access controls, change management, and monitoring, or by eliminating the need for security tools. Okay. And last question, which of the following best reflects strong cybersecurity readiness? Is it buying the latest security tools, having an annual security project, or controls that operate consistently and produce usable evidence, or is it passing a one-time assessment? So go ahead and take your selections, hit submit, and we will see who answered them all correctly And the top three, to get them right, will get a $50 Amazon gift card electronically delivered. Okay.
So now we're running short on time. So what I would suggest is please feel free to put questions in the chat. We will definitely respond. If you have questions that you'd like to get addressed, please contact your client strategy advisor if you're a client, or you can reach out to me. We'll make sure that you have my contact information if you're someone who's not necessarily a client or wants more information. Happy to address any question that you have. Jill?
Okay, yep, and I can launch the survey for just how the event went for you today. If you have any suggestions or feedback, please take this poll. And again, this qualifies you for the DoorDash gift card. It'll also be emailed out later today as well, if you want to wait for that.
Excellent. So we'll give you a little time to do that.
Give you a little time, yep.
Yep. Yeah, but we want to thank everyone for coming to our webinar. With the response that we got and the attendance that we got today, we understand that it's a very important topic to every business. Hopefully, we've educated you to a point where you feel more aware, but also will have better questions and how you can align it to your business. We're happy to be a resource for you. We appreciate the time and the attention, and we look forward to the next series. So thank you all very much.
Thanks all.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.